From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya! Tonight we're talking about Infini. It's a 2015 Australian science fiction again, Surrey, which
I know,
really...
I could tell because all the actors are from Home and Away and Neighbours.
Brilliant. Well, when you think about it, that's such good stomping ground for an actor, isn't it?
Well,
like such good practice.
Being a soapy, there's so many characters involved. Big parts. So
yeah,
there's lots
but you're dealing with
opportunity.
directors and writers and camera crew and all this kind of stuff, and they pump out a lot of content really quickly. Infini is directed by Shane Abbess. That's my guess.
I think you pronounce it Shane.
Shane? Shane?
That's an Australian name.
That's an Australian, yeah. So Shane Abbess has directed this. He also has written and directed a couple other feature films. There's another science fiction after this one that he's done in 2016. So that might be something that we need to check out in a future episode, because this film kind of blew me away, and we'll get to it very soon.
This film was so good on many levels. I loved it.
Lots of levels, really deep, made you think, great science fiction. We'll get into that in a minute. He also wrote it along with another fella called Brian Kashar, as my pronunciation always goes, Kashia. Anyway, it's not Japanese, so sorry, can't perfectly pronounce it.
Brian, if you're listening, get in touch.
Please do.
Tell us about your last name.
Tell us.
Have we pronounced Brian correctly? I hope we have.
Brain, maybe. Brain, like space brain.
Brian.
Anyway, Shane and Brian nutted out this story, and it's brilliant. It's a great script, and Shane got behind the realms of directing it. Basically, just as a little brief synopsis, is that it is set in the 23rd century, and they're sending an elite search and rescue team into an off-world mining facility to rescue a character called Whit Carmichael, the lone survivor of a biological outbreak in this station in the furthest parts of our galaxy that has had a really bad history to it, I think.
Well,
yeah.
But wait, first, warning.
Yeah, that's just the synopsis. You can read that on IMDb.
This is a spoiler warning. From this point forward, we're going to be talking about everything. So turn back now, watch the film. Even
Definitely
if you've seen
watch
it, watch it again.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Totally.
I think tune back in and hear how we thought our brains in space about this. Wow.
Wow, you are talking very good there.
My talk not good so much today.
No, you're having a moment, aren't you? We got to push that brain back into its cavity.
There's that big blue pulsing thing. It's messy.
Yeah, it doesn't fit into a normal human skull, so it's really difficult at times. It oozes out. Like in this film, there's a lot of ooze in this film.
Our hosts sometimes suffer.
Yes. So what was your number one takeaway, from Infini 2015?
My number one takeaway is that when you're in the future and you've got the opportunity, for example, to do a search and rescue to a far-flung colony or experimental spacecraft or mining place,
you should never do it.
That you've lost contact with, don't. Because you will get torn to pieces, you'll go insane, you'll be eaten, all of those things. And I'm thinking Event Horizon, Aliens. I'm thinking this movie here, Infini. None of those search and rescue teams fare as well as perhaps they might.
No, and it's a little bit similar to, I think, even Predator, the idea of like going into a place where there's just some nasty thing.
Well, also
and
this is...
other people have gone ahead of you and they haven't come back.
Well, it's got a very similar situation here. In Predator, their primary objective was to find out what happened to the previous team and rescue the senator or ambassador who was kidnapped.
Yeah.
And they did in that first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And in this one here, the primary thing was to stop this payload from reaching Earth. Finished easily in the first half of the film.
Yeah.
Before you're like, okay, well, that's done with.
Yeah, go back quick.
Yeah, get out of there, go. Scoot.
So, and we'll get into the details of like why they can't scoot so quickly, because that was another feature I liked in this film. Definitely that they raised those stakes, quite drastically, in terms of like, well, because of the time difference, it's not that easy to get back, and
No, it's great.
Yeah, it's great raising of the stakes.
So, is this a hope, warning, or an experiment?
I think it's definitely a warning because of what we basically said, that if you're off in the furthest part of our galaxy and previous missions have gone there and they haven't come back, you should not go. And also it tends to be, don't we have this warning as humans a lot of the time? It goes beyond science fiction. It's also in horror and drama films sometimes, or stories, where it's like, like we have, it's dangerous to just go right to the edge, isn't it? It's always just a little bit,
especially
like you can go before the edge is okay, but you get all the way to that edge, like the furthest bit, and you've gone too far. You're
especially when it's motivated by a bit of greed.
Yeah.
Because they were mining this fuel source. Like it's an astonishing fuel source. Yep. The whole planet was basically made of this fuel source, which is unique to this planet. And you go, well...
highly combustible.
And thus they've been driven to go there, out on the edge, dangerous place.
Yes.
Where we clearly figure that people shouldn't go.
And I guess that's always the warning, like, isn't it? Like we do that currently on Earth. Like our mining companies will mine something until it's exhausted, and even though maybe it's like not good for the environment, so we kind of like, as humans, we find it hard to stop ourselves from going further down that hole, don't we? And like getting ourselves into trouble. And even addictions are the same. Like people will go right down to an addiction that might even kill them, even though all the warning signs are there.
And even before they start, they're told, you know what, heroin, not a good choice.
No, you're going to be addicted. You're going to be lying in the gutter or selling your body for...
And look, you can do that same thing with far more legal drugs too.
You can.
Like, much easier.
So I do feel it's a major warning, like, again, very similar to Alien in that way of, if we're going to go dig up this great source of energy, but hang on, it's too good to be true. There's danger involved. And you can imagine, like, it seemed like the past of this place, Infini, was a bit grey, what they told us in the film, a little bit like Alien, where we don't get all the bits, but it's almost like they kind of obviously discovered it, and then they set up a mining post, and the mining post went crazy, and they locked it down, but then they've like sent other teams back to kind of double check on it, I suppose, and those teams have gone AWOL again, but the company or the government or whatever it is back on Earth kind of keeps going, just send another team.
Yeah.
Maybe this one will work.
Well, see, I do, though, think that there was that hope. So, because I was wondering, when I was watching this movie, it seems a bit warning. Like I said, you're going into places that you should leave alone. That's a classic science fiction warning movie, is where you're pushing the boundaries, and...
Pushing the boundaries of science.
Pushing the boundaries will lead to disaster. Stay where it's a bit safer, which is always... Sometimes you get hope where they're pushing the boundaries, like Interstellar.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries in order to save everyone, which is great.
Yeah.
And I think in this one, we've got a bit of hope there. And I think you'll probably agree on this one, is that the aliens, this alien force that they meet does grow, it learns, and the people, again, we've done our spoiler warning here.
Yeah.
The people do come back. Like after this horror that they endure, the aliens almost like apologize.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you know what? We have kind of figured out something nice here.
Yeah.
And so it gives you that hope to see that humanity, first of all, humanity's not the only one who has its problems. But if these primordial alien slime can develop a bit of humanity, dare I say, then surely humans can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk more about some of that symbology and
yeah, well, and I do think like there were, and I did write that here. Like I've written down, there's a small slice of hope because of how it does end. That the aliens, for 95% of the film, they're exploring the bad side of humans, the top of the predator, the top of the food chain idea. But then the ending basically is kind of saying, well, humanity does have this nice side to it, you know. You could instead of like fully embracing all those negatives that we do of killing each other and violence and all that in fact there is a good side to us, you know, and there is the loving side and there is the caring side and there's the motivation side and the inspiring side that the aliens kind of realize that at the end, don't they? That organism does it. If they can evolve so quickly into any kind of feature, well, they could choose the better side versus the evil side.
And that I think was the theme stated was that what is life?
What is life?
Life is the choice.
Yeah.
You get to have some sort of a choice, and that was brought up a couple of times, and I really liked that, and that's one of the things I really liked about this film here was that you can have just pure horror or action science fiction. This one, I think, explored the bounds of a bit of action, a bit of horror, but it also went to a more classic, pure science fiction of let's explore a topic and a subject and get a bit philosophical, but not too deep into it. And we'll raise some questions. We'll kind of answer a little bit and we'll move on. It really is that science fiction that I really like, where you've got the shooty, fighty, and then you got the suspenseful horror and this unknown mystery, but then you've also got a deeper question about humanity itself. And that's so many great science fiction combine those elements well.
Yes.
Like, I mean, even 2001 sort of had this tension and conflict with Hal, which I think before I watched that film, I thought that's what the film was about.
Yeah.
But there's those deeper questions about our interactions and so forth. And this film delivers on that. And Matrix is another great one where you can look at it just as a shooty, bangy, whiz-bang pow-pow. And it's awesome. But it also explores this concept of free will and perception and what is reality and so forth. Fantastic movie for that.
Yeah, definitely that theme of questioning what is life, I think, that this film does. What was your favourite scene, Surrey?
My favourite scene was towards the end when Carmichael and that other dude whose name escapes me.
Huntington?
Yeah, they're sort of having that discussion. You know, he walks up and puts a gun to his head. And
Huntington. Yeah.
And there was like that really weird editing or he's chopping and they're one moment sitting next to each other.
I liked that editing.
It really felt like, I'm pretty sure at uni I've had those same evenings, no guns or violence, but the same sort of thing where you sort of say, yeah, we should get McDonald's. Yeah, no, I don't want McDonald's. Yeah, we should. No.
Sorry, McDonald's.
And then you that sort of stops it, and then you just have like a
moment of
a total, what do you call it? Disconnect, where you're suddenly up and you're talking about something entirely different, and then suddenly you're somewhere else in the house sitting down. We should get McDonald's. No, like. And your memories of the evening, it's that same sort of chopped, like you're going from, I'm really focused on this one thing and one person has a disagreement. Suddenly, you're laughing it up and doing something else. And then you're investigating what's underneath the house brick, like you found in the backyard. And,
Sounds like you were on heroin there, sorry.
Well, I suspect you do more sleeping when you're on heroin. But I love the way that got across that whole feeling of these two characters really struggling to be, sober and sensible.
Yep.
And then that's why it reminds me of some of my uni days. It's like you're really trying to keep it together and have a reasonable discussion, but as you're sidetracking and it's up and down, and suddenly you're back to what you're repeating.
You were talking about 20 minutes ago.
Ad infinitum, 20 minutes ago. But then that then is the same later on where those two characters are having the fight.
Yes.
And it's the same thing where one of them is totally pounding the other one and chucking them about the place, and then the roles suddenly swap and the other person's just a ragdoll being beaten. And then like it's these hard little cuts between flash. The whole feeling I got from those two, that extended scene, if you like, was it really strongly portrayed this slip and being lost, disconnected from humanity, and swinging through all the exploration this alien goo was doing. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. There's a couple other parts I like, but if you're talking about that was my favorite one. That's the bit that really stands out to me. I was like, that's just so cool, the way that was just really well done.
Yeah, I love that editing as well. I loved how that was done a few times throughout the film as well, that real choppy editing. So it's, they were moving, within their location. They went from, like you and I are sitting, and then like one standing, and then one, swapping screens. So very disorientating, as an audience member. But that's the whole point, is they're disorientated.
Well, that's it, because
they're trying to, as you said, hold it together like you are when you're drunk and you're trying to pull yourself.
You're trying to get into the nightclub, past the bouncer.
Trying to get past the bouncer. All of a sudden, hey, let's talk about science fiction. Never gets you in, actually. But it's very they're fighting this kind of thing that's overtaken their brain, and the filmmaker obviously tried to give the audience that effect of like what that would be like. And time is distorted, and the world you're in is distorted. Everything changes, and even the people you're with,
when Carmichael makes that jump, and he catches on, he slips and falls.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's no way he survived that.
No.
And so then I was thinking, from this point forward, is he just dead?
Yeah.
And then it introduced the idea that maybe he was taken over. It's like, but it all culminated with that weird conversation with that fellow.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yes.
So what was one sci-fi part that you liked in this film?
I like this idea of slipstreaming. So this film has some opening text that explains slipstreaming as the way that they are transported across the galaxy rapidly, and so changing organic form into data and then sending it somewhere, and obviously it like what's the word? Comes back together.
Rematerializes?
Yes, that's the word. I don't know enough about Star Trek. I'm not sure if this is what Scotty was doing to everyone all the time, because I'm not a huge Star Trek person, but this idea of like, beam me up, Scotty. But maybe it's similar to that, and I might get really pounded on social media about my interpretation of that. But slipstreaming, I liked this idea. I really, you and I have seen stuff. We've seen a lot of science fiction, and even previously, we've seen like, it's like about traveling the speed of light and going through black holes and then it's like this idea of changing us into data, which is very much what we're into with mobile phones at the moment, and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all, so it's kind of like, what if you could change a human into data and then just boom, beam it across the universe? It's sort of a totally different way. And I really liked that. And I also liked then the exploration of that, where, we even very rapidly at the start of the film, those soldiers go off. And of course, because they're beamed off and there is a time difference, they're only off Earth for a few seconds and they come back a bit like Interstellar. There's been a time lag. So wherever they've gone has been hours, and then they've come back, but it's only a few seconds. And yet they've like been in a battle. And that just to me really ignites my imagination. Like I really love that idea, and I like that type of science fiction.
I really love the effect they use for that as well, where the person kind of wobbles and fits and then squelches in on themselves. Like it didn't look like a comfortable or like you mentioned Star Trek, but that was always been and this nice little calming beam, and they just kind of vaporize. This looked like. The old werewolf transformations, where they'd be like, and then you hear the cracking sounds as things stretch out.
Yeah.
As I said, this is the equivalent to teleportation for that.
Yes.
It's funny, you said at the start of the film they had the script. As soon as I saw text come up on the start, I actually covered it over with my hand because I was watching my phone.
Right.
So I was like, I do not like explanatory text at the start of films.
I'm not a fan of it either.
So I thought, I'm going to see, because I haven't done this before, I'm going to see if I'll cover that text up.
Yeah, interesting.
Wait for it to finish. and then just start watching the film and see if I miss out or have any trouble. And then at the end of the film, I went back and read it.
Yep.
And as it turns out, I'm not entirely sure why they even wrote it in there.
Yeah, it didn't really need to be there.
Because normally that text is things like, in the 20th... Well, I suppose the first bit said, the most dangerous jobs. And you're like, well, that's the same as today, right?
Yeah.
Like, you go work on an oil rig, it's pretty dangerous.
Yes.
You also get paid very well. Whatever. But it was interesting that, watching the film, they use this term slipstreaming. I hadn't read it until afterwards. It didn't take away from it at all. I was happy. In fact, I was really pleased when I saw the West Coast team being sent off. They're watching, and they said, "Yep, you're off," and they just sort of stand there giving them a briefing. And I was expecting, they're going to turn around and march out. And then nope, they sort of wobbled and crushed in on themselves and disappeared. I went, oh no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like no one's reacting like, oh, that's weird. Like so that must be what they do.
Yep.
And then moments later they come back in. I said, are these the same people or is these different? And they're all screaming and carrying on. I'm like, okay, this is really exciting.
Yeah, it was.
So in fact, I think.
But I agree with you. Like, I mean, the opening text, and I wrote it down. It's like 23rd century. I don't think we really needed to probably. We didn't really even need to know that, and the slipstreaming thing. I mean, it's again, even then they say in the text, slipstreaming is what it is. Like, it's a way of sending data across the universe from an organic source and reassembling it. But then also, it's a bit dangerous. Like, it is dangerous. Like you're just saying, like working on it. It's like, well, in that opening, in that scene, you see how dangerous it is. Like, because in the opening scene, they're kind of all disorientated.
Yeah.
So I'm not a massive fan of that text. It would be great to know if the director wanted that at the start, because sometimes I have heard that comes back as feedback. Like sometimes people watch it and people go, "What's slipstreaming? I don't know what slipstreaming is."
Yeah,
and then they go, "Well, just write it at the start. Like write a definition."
I reckon it was feedback. There's like some audience members are going, what happened to them? They said,
are they the same people? Who are they? Why are they doing that?
How did they do that?
How does that work? So,
and you see the director writing going, it's not a terribly important part of the film.
No.
Like, it's just a convenient mechanism for getting them to a far-flung place, and leaving them there for what seems to be a fairly long time. And bringing them back and not a long time. Like it's a really helpful and useful story element, but it has no bearing. Like they could have done the same as in Aliens where they're in sleep. Yeah, you'll be in sleep for well, I guess the baby pregnant. You couldn't say you're in sleep for 9 months. And he said, well, my baby will be born by then. But they could have said you'll be asleep. It's going to take you 2 weeks of hyper travel. Yeah, and you'll be asleep. And they could have done that. And you go, well, I'll be back before your next ultrasound type of thing. Yeah. But this was just more convenient and cooler. Yeah. And I think it was a bit more of a vision of how it could go. Yes. It's a bit like Altered Carbon, if you've ever read that or seen it. No. That there they do needle casting, same deal. They only digitize the contents of your brain, as in all your memories and thoughts from birth get stored to a computer that's embedded in you, and then they transmit that to clone bodies that you then inhabit. Right. But same deal. Yeah. Same deal as you're sending people that way. Yeah.
So what about, have you been up to anything science fiction related with your own staff or any other creative projects that's going on right now, Surrey?
The most science fiction thing I've been doing is trying to put together a computer. I'm designing my ultimate computer, which will be for video editing, game playing, game writing, nice. Audio recording and so forth.
Slipstreaming.
Almost there. I'm going to wait for the next generation of CPU and then I'll be slipstreaming.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I've been so bogged down renovating this house for sale. Yeah. That very little has been going ahead there, but the brain is still churning and we'll see what happens the next couple of weeks.
Definitely.
Cool. And how about you, Mark? You've been nude painting or...
Nude painting.
Dancing under the moon or something?
Yes, definitely. I don't know what that reference is, but I'm going to say yes. Werewolf time out there, injecting werewolf blood under the full moon.
Werewolf blood that's what you call beer, and injecting is in your mouth?
Yes, something like that.
Yes, okay.
But no, just working on a couple of different creative projects. I've talked about I'm doing this documentary, so I'm plodding away on that, on the planning. I myself are renovating my little office space, so I've gotten into the paint rolls and that, which is not science fiction related. Be good to slipstream to the point that that's all done. Where do you want to slipstream to? To 2 days' time where I've already painted a room.
Yeah, can we get some time dilation where I spend 10 seconds somewhere and it's like 2 days here?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the one who's doing the painting though, so
yeah, so I'd still come back and wouldn't be painted.
Still not done.
Damn it! How do I get someone to paint it? You've got to pay them. Oh,
you just skipped from Friday to Monday and lost your weekend.
I lost my weekend. Damn you!
The wrong way around.
Yeah.
Oh, how good would that be? They do the other way. Like you disappear for like 10 minutes and it's like a day.
Your working day is done. You're paid for
your lunch break. You just go slipstream past a black hole, hang out there for like a couple of days, do whatever you want to do.
Wouldn't that be then like years have gone by?
Slipstream back and it's been a couple of hours maybe. There's your lunchtime.
And yeah, I'm just also thinking about where Space Brains should move to next year, Surrey, and I don't mean physically, but I'm thinking that
I was going to say because I'm building a house.
No, I don't mean that. I mean we should be pushing ahead with, I reckon, some sort of science fiction festival thing. So I reckon we need to put some roots into that idea.
I think so too.
It's bubbling. It's bubbling in my mind.
I think definitely an event.
Yeah,
an event is on the cards of some description, which seems funny to be in this day and age. We're talking about events, but it could be a virtual event.
It could be virtual, but I think we can make something happen. So anyway, that's just my brain kind of keeps coming back to that. So I think we need to nail down some details, and I think this might be the time. 2021 might be the year that we do that.
Year of the Space Brain.
Year of the Space Brain.
Absolutely.
So let's get into talking a bit more of the details. We had Infini directed by Shane. Shaney. And Brian also chipped in with some words. Brian and Shane got together and wrote some words on a page, and Shane directed them. So we're making the Aussie language of names that we do in Australia.
Look, we've got it easy on this one because we're talking about Australian, and we're talking predominantly white Australians, but not all of them.
No, not all of them.
We've got the less commonly known Hemsworth.
Yeah.
The younger brother Luke,
which I thought I saw a joke about him a couple of years ago that he's not an actor, but then when I looked him up, he's actually acted in quite a bit of stuff. So
he's all over the shop. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure I saw this parody of him not really being an actor, like being in their shadow and being a real estate agent or something. But maybe that was the actual joke of it all when I just went over my head.
Well, you can imagine though that the Hemsworth brothers reunion. You've got Chris obviously going, that world's greatest, the world's most funded film, fund-making film. What's that called? That record-breaking blockbuster
Thor
series. Yeah, I was in that. And Liam goes, I had a cameo in The Good Place.
Yes.
Luke says, or done Neighbours.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Actually, he did Infini as well.
He did Infini, yeah. And he's done a couple of other movies recently.
With Daniel MacPherson.
Daniel has been quite successful over the years.
He was really good in this, I think.
And I was just going to say, he comes from the soap. They all most of these guys have had a bit of a stint, like we said at the start tonight, of Home and Away or Neighbours, the big soapies here in Australia. Daniel had a big, long-standing character in Neighbours for many years. I know he's also been the host on, is it Dancing with the Stars or something like that, I think. And so he did have a bit of period of time there in the US doing I think a couple of movies and a TV series, but he's actually really outstanding in this, I think. He really shows his acting chops. It comes up trumps. So we've got a bit of a, I was going to say, I'm really finding my words a bit hard tonight. Sorry, I don't know what it is, but
I've infected you with my
your word talking has gotten into my brain. My space brain is oozing on the floor. Maybe we are being overtaken by this alien.
God, I hope so.
We'll be smarter by the end of the episode if it overtakes us. But this is a little bit like Occupation, as in there's a good variety of characters and they've all kind of got their own journey going on. So it's not just, the one character, so to speak. There's a bunch of great Aussie actors.
Got Grace Huang. She's Taiwanese of Chinese descent.
Yep, she plays
Australian
Claire,
actress.
the medic.
Yeah.
I did like that. I did like what you were saying, that disorientation. Like even when they're fighting, Huntington turns around, medic.
Yeah, and it's just it is just like a night out.
Night out with the fellas.
Suddenly, someone remembers a previous sort of in joke you had.
Joke that happened 3 hours ago.
Carries on about Luke Hemsworth, Luke Ford.
Yeah.
Chester Huntington.
Yeah.
What a name.
Huntington. They've got good names in this, actually. I don't know if there's some... Because you've got Carmichael, Greenwich, Kent, and Huntington.
I didn't think of that, but they are all... Anyway.
Yeah. So, like we mentioned before, let's get stuck into a bit of what actually happens in Infini. The opening image, we have that text that you blanked out. Well, I will let you know what it says. It said, by the end of the 23rd century... 95% of the world is on or below the poverty line. It's an interesting take, isn't it? As a result of this, many
I'm not sure
take
that's possible.
Dangerous jobs in interplanetary mining, military, or space explorations. I'm like, well, isn't this what we all do now anyway for money?
I take dangerous jobs programming, I tell you.
This is just what we all do. We just all take jobs to get the money. That's what I do. Hence why I'm doing Space Brains. We're getting paid at some point, aren't we?
Did I say that at some point?
And also this idea of slipstream, in that they can turn, it's the way that we get off Earth and we go to these outer sources, that they can turn organic matter into data and transmit it. And the other piece of information they gave us there, was an apex system, which is fused to their central nervous system. That thing that's kind of bolted
really
into there.
Didn't play much of a part in that.
No, I don't think it did it? And on top of that, they do say that the slipstreaming is dangerous, and because there's a high fatality rate, and it's a bit controversial. So not everyone on Earth is kind of like, yeah, we should be doing this. So we come in and there's a group of sweating, disorientated people, and there's all these voices and scientists that are kind of up in their grill questioning them, and it's really intense.
I found that disorienting because the questioning was look at me, calm down, come in.
Calm down, but look at me, sorry.
But the pictures of all the people were they were just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
I was like, are we hearing this voice, the sound from some future point? And we were seeing the images of an earlier point. But I have a feeling they're purposefully getting up in the, by the time I got to the end and I saw that scene essentially repeated.
Yeah, it is.
I went, okay, I think they're purposefully stressing them and really pushing for response, because they've got to identify as quickly as possible if they're properly conscious and who they are and all the rest of it, and put them under heavy stress and pushing for it will either break them because they are mentally lost it or something, or physically lost it.
And I think as well that it was supposed to emphasize where they've just come from, and we'll talk about it a bit later in the plot, but it's not 100% clear whether they remember what happened to them, or if it's maybe a blurry memory, or if they realize something happened to them, definitely. But so that intensity of that scene is kind of dramatized by the fact that then you've got these people yelling at you, kind of like if you've ever, I was in a car crash when I was 19, and you then have the people that are not in the car crash, they start offering you advice and telling you stuff, and it's very disorientating because you yourself are in this sort of shock, and so then you're like, I'll do this, and I'll tell, they tell you to do something, and you're kind of like, you're not necessarily responsive the way that you normally are,
And I also loved the symmetry of showing this again at the end, because obviously all of these people die, which we have said with spoiler. As soon as you say something like that, you kind of go, "Oh, I hope I warned everyone."
We did.
You've been warned, okay? So yeah, it's they've all died, and you see this at the start, and okay, it doesn't mean much at that point,
it doesn't
except
at all.
Okay, something's happened. But then as the movie goes on and they're getting more and more danger, I was starting to cast my mind back to that and going, What was that opening scene then? And then they said, it could replicate anyone, it could replicate any biological, even a full person. Yeah, I suppose. And I'm something, are they all aliens going back? Or, So it was a really good thing to throw that at the start. That meant that your mind started thinking about these things.
Yeah, started doubting.
Later on.
Yeah.
Which was really very good.
So we cut from that to, there's a young shaved man. He's kind of bent over. This is Whit, and he's the main character, played by Daniel MacPherson.
But, his son will be, from his mum. The son will have a mum and a dad. He would be a half-wit, right? Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry. It's like...
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, be a half-wit. Okay.
Oh, that's good comedy on Space Brains. Sorry.
Well, I did tell you they don't pay us. So you get what you pay for here.
This young guy is hunched over. He's a bit stressed. He's like in a locker room or something like that. That's what it looks like. And he does have that apex metal thing in his back. And he's kind of like, he's kind of getting ready for something obviously seriously. And he's thinking. And so it's a good old fashioned flashback. And it reveals sort of him then thinking out on a balcony. And it's a great, balcony in this futuristic, really built up, everyone living on top of each other. Apartment buildings, it's not very green or lush.
A bit Blade Runner-ish.
Yeah, very much like that. And a bit run down, all this kind of idea. And he's got his wife comes out and she's pregnant. So it's, obviously raising the stakes that way. They have a conversation about whether he should go or shouldn't go. He's sort of like, well, I need to go for the money. And it's funny because she kind of agrees with that, but then she's also then goes, oh, you shouldn't go. Maybe you should stay. And she ends up giving him this photo of the two of them, which I liked because he's like, oh, that's really old school.
He does mention that. Also, it's folded.
Yeah.
Every photo in every movie, particularly if it's like of a loved one, it has to be folded. I mean, Back to the Future, he pulls out the photo, it's folded. He unfolds it to reveal that he's fading.
Yes.
It's a reveal, and this one's folded as well because it's folded over. It has it, and he opens it to reveal it's a picture of the two of them.
And there's a love note on the back, not that we sort of see exactly what it says, but it says something like "I love you, baby" or whatever, And he promises that he'll be home, like he's going to bounce off and bounce back, as we sort of said at the start. There's a bit of a time glitch, and so he'll be home for dinner, whatever that means. Anyway, it cuts back to him in that locker room and he's in the West Coast division. Stuff that East Coast guys, those lame asses. There's a bit of banter of them. And there's kind of like, they look like a SWAT team. They're all like armored up, black suited. They've got like their names in a special skull patch on their biceps. And you kind of got 5 or 6 guys, they're really bulky, big dudes. They're giving each other a little bit of, banter. The captain in particular gives Whit, in particular, some sort of shit, gives him a bit of, a rub down.
Clearly they were either literally brothers or have come from a situation where they would consider each other. He refers to him as brother. And, they're clearly very close, which was nice. Was it just me, or was that Captain He the janitor from Scrubs?
That's just you. That wasn't... No.
Yeah, sure. No.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we can IMDb that, but I don't think...
I'll look it up later.
Look it up after. My vote is no.
Okay.
Because he's also the father in Mean Girls, and that's definitely not the same guy.
He's also a cop in
He'd be
Wild
too
Horse.
old as well, I reckon. He'd be much older.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. I was going...
Yeah. Like, he'd be much older now, in 2015.
Yes.
Yeah. Scrubs was 90s. Early noughties.
Yeah, okay. Look, I'll bow down to the guy had a big beard on. I don't recognise people very well.
Anyway, the captain tells a couple of other guys to, you're already ready, get out there, go. And he brings over this guy, Ponta, I think, and he says to him, he kind of pulls him aside and he's like, that last mission, there's a little bit of time missing, and he's like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. And he's like, no, I think it is a big deal. You don't normally have this time missing. And they kind of have this kind of conspiracy kind of conversation a little bit. Like, and he sort of says, well,
dirty time.
Yeah, you know, like obviously maybe he's taken some time for whatever reason on the mission. I didn't really know how you would prosper from that at this point in time, but you know, somehow he's getting on it. And he says, well, we'll talk about it like later at the pub, off the record sort of thing. And they're like, okay, you know, no worries.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing that. I was thinking, oh, okay.
Anyway, we then get this, we mentioned it before, this group of soldiers are kind of like, you know, they're in the stance and they're ready to go and they're getting ready to slipstream. And, you know, there's that boss guy and he kind of like, and the scientists, and they're like ready and they mount up and they bam, they're gone, aren't they? They're all sort of like, as you said before, they kind of
crumple
up and then vanish. And you get a great, like, you know, big computer screen telling us, you know, it sort of like shows you a bit of a projection. There's a time counting, and there's only a few seconds goes by, and then they're back, and it's like there's only half of them to begin with, and one guy's bloodied and vomiting blood, and I think the woman's like disorientated, and she's kind of like looking like she's like talking to someone, and then another guy starts like still firing his gun, you know, like. Into the scientist kind of idea, and they're totally disorientated.
And then the dude like pulls the pin on the grenade.
Yeah,
and the screen goes blank.
Yeah, and then it writes up that there's a quarantine breach.
And there was an explosion.
Yeah, there was.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes.
And then there's quarantine, and the doors locked, so they're locked in.
Yeah. So Whit and the captain and Ponta are kind of suddenly locked back in the room they were in.
Yeah.
And then there's like fire. They're like the fire's on, and there's bullets, and there's people running past their door. And then the voices that told us there was a lockdown, they say the same voice says, "Oh, it's Delta lockdown or something."
Delta quarantine.
Delta quarantine, and they kind of look at each other serious. And Whit says, "What does that mean?" And Captain's like, they're going to kill us. Like, they're going to annihilate everyone in the centre. And
so fatal quarantine comes after Delta lockdown.
And he says, so we have to jump. Like, we have to get out of here. And so Ponta sets Whit to jump. And then he's trying to do the captain, but there's like a security clearance problem, isn't there?
Yeah, he can't break through. So, and I think this is what that whole, you've got time missing. They've got a spare box they're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling they must be doing... You can imagine some sort of back end deals. Maybe they're selling equipment, or or maybe they're just using this teleporter to piss around.
Yeah,
because if it's got
maybe there's a planet out there that's a lot of fun. Or
if you've got time dilation, a couple of minutes time difference could well mean hours somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
and anyway, then Pontus is like says to Captain, "I can't," and they're like they have a bit of a standoff, but then he's like, "No, I can't do it." And then he disappears.
Yeah, his little countdown timer goes off.
And then Whit is the same. He comes and Captain kind of just looks distressed. He's obviously stuck.
There's gas, and that's the last we see of him.
And we go anywhere. It's now the East Coast.
Hello.
And we have this head boss. He sort of basically here. There's another group of soldiers that they say is search and rescue. There's one actual soldier, Rex. But this head boss kind of like brings them all up to speed, and he brings up this hologram of Infini. He says, we've got a mission. We need to get in quick. We need to get out really quick. And
we get told about the inspector. Like, so there was some sort of a catastrophe that happened there.
Yeah.
An inspector went there to investigate.
Yep.
And he reported back saying that, there was like a lot of dead people, and there was this load going off the planet to come to Earth. He said, no, don't have any loads come off. He said, there'll be an extinction event if even just one load gets to Earth.
Yes.
And so you suddenly go, oh, that's... And I'm thinking, like, it's going to ignite the atmosphere or explode or something.
Yeah.
And then we find out that this inspector fellow they tried to recall him, but he destroyed his Apex device and started up the machinery to send a payload. And they're suddenly going... what the hell's going on? He just told us that that's going to kill everyone, and now he's doing it.
Yes.
So this is why they were sending the West Coast dudes.
Yes.
We find out that's why they sent the West Coast dudes, and the East Coast guys are going, okay, well, sure, we're going to have to go and get this fellow. And then Boss gets an update on his little earpiece, and there's a pause, and he says, you know what I really liked about this scene And I think this is the Australian movie coming out here, because we've watched a few Australian science fiction and we've seen a lot of US science fiction. In the Australian ones, this guy in authority is not a dickhead.
No.
He's respectful to the people that he's sending through. He gives them good, helpful, friendly advice. Though it's still authoritative because he's the boss man. He's telling them what to do. But it's delivered like they're people.
Yes.
They're not, disposable cogs in a vast machine. And he stops and listens to things and he says, we've just lost the West Coast. Oh, how long are they locked down for? No, they're all gone. And so there's a bit of silence and he goes, okay, well, also a payload has been launched. We've got like 6 minutes with the way slipstreaming is. And, there's only one survivor of the West Coast. He just apparently did a black jump or whatever it was. You got to find him as well and get the payload. And I really love that scene, that I got that feeling that these were professionals who were respected, and they weren't, masculine and sir, yes sir, rah rah rah, we are the best of the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and all the other garbage crap like that. And I've noticed that in these Australian films, there's a bit more laid back. The authoritarianism is dialed back a bit. We got that in Otherworld. Like there's a security guard, and she's up there trying to bang on the door, and the security guard, instead of like he doesn't pull a gun and all the taser or anything, he offers her a cup of tea. Yeah. I said, oh, well, I can't let you up there, but you can wait down here for a I'm putting on a cup of tea. You want a cup of tea? And she says, oh, yeah, that'd be nice. And he walks off, and then she runs through, and he comes back and is disappointed. He goes, I've got to go get her now. Yeah. As opposed to, hit the red alarm, pull the guns, let's go shoot this son of a bitch. And I know there's the same thing that happened in Occupation, where the beggar fellow is drawing, and the cop comes up and says, you got to move on. The cop's being authoritative and saying, we're not putting up with their shit. But there's sort of a bit of friendliness there, that banter, that you're another human being, I'm a human being, and, we're just going to have to deal with this. And I think that is, I'm positive now that I've seen it in so many of these films, that is a trait of the Australian film, is it just this different attitude between people of rank and lower people of rank. There's a different way of interacting, which
I think so.
Which feels far more familiar. Often when I'm watching American films, I'm sort of going, geez, these guys are all bastards. Yeah, yeah. If someone yelled at me like that, I would just not do what they told me. Yeah, yeah. I'd literally just walk away, you will do this and you'll do that. See ya. You can leave at any time. Okay, bye. Yeah. And the whole squad just walks off, and then the guys left to go, I've got no one to train. You're all losers. And I'm here by myself. As opposed to, I think, it's just a different thing. If an Australian's not happy with you, they just won't turn up. That's right. You just won't see them again.
I think that's the thing they know. The authorities, especially government, it's like, well, if we mistreat them, they won't come to work. Yeah, they'll just stop showing up, and then we'll have no one. So even though we're in this tough situation with poverty, we still need to be nice to each other.
There won't be formal complaints or any of that sort of business. It'll just be they turn up the next day and the boss finds that there's no one there. Yeah. So if you could all just come in on the weekend, that'd be great. No one's there on the weekend. No. Not that. I'm not doing that. They don't turn up on Monday either. I'm feeling sick. Sorry, mate. Yeah. So anyway, that's just an interesting observation I've had now. Yeah.
But it's a good scene, that one, because it kind of sets up the stakes of the dangers, what's expected, where they're going, the fact that there is a time delay. They even do say Whit has been there, not that long, but it's already been a week on his time.
Yeah. This also stops them from taking really high-tech technology. Yes. They said their sensors and other stuff is going to be a bit screwy because of these black holes.
Yes, because it's too far out. It's the furthest in the universe. And also in terms of contacting back to Earth, there's a time, by the time you contact us, hours would have gone by.
It's the metaphorical cabin in the woods. Yes. There's no cell phone reception. You'd be lucky to get a radio broadcast there.
You can't just call for help.
The forest ranger passes by, once a week, maybe. sort of thing. And if there's a storm, the road washes out. Yeah, like that's the usual setup, isn't it,
Yes,
for horror?
it is, yeah.
And this is the same thing. You're going up there, it'll be time dilation will be huge. Black holes can't take really powerful technology. Communications sketchy.
Yeah.
And if there's a storm, the road will wash out. Let's go.
And you're just going to go to a place where the last person we sent there went totally batshit crazy.
Yeah, the last couple teams.
Which we can't explain why, really. But yeah. So the team does Slipstream. They arrive in this storage room. One of them is straight away onto like, there's no airborne viruses, but there's coolant and it's really freezing cold. I liked how cold it was. There's a lot of that kind of, fogging up of the glasses very quickly.
Pushes the Ponta,
dead body,
I think it was.
Yeah, it was Ponta,
off the chair. And it's like, it happens off screen. And a lot of things happen off screen on this, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
But you do see a little bit of red crystals
splash
up into the air. And so you know what that is without having seen a body smash into pieces.
And the team does the good old horror thing, which is let's just all separate.
Yeah, you go that way, we'll go this way.
We'll go this way, you go that way, you guys go up through the vents, you go down that scary dark tunnel. I'm going to go alone to the control center. So they do a lot of that. They go off.
Just like aliens, really.
Yeah.
This scene was reminiscent of that. Where
it was very reminiscent.
They're stalking through with their flashlights. And
I tell you what I did like, but was in these early moments is like the way the spaceship is, or the mine site is kind of shown, so like what I mean is like the setting. So like when they in the storage room, there's lots of those pallet plastic white metal crate things. You can get them and they fill them up here in factories with fluids. So, but it looked really cool on this spaceship because they had a whole bunch of them stacked on top of each other. So, it's something that's very current, and you go to any sort of factory that uses those fluids, they have them and they're protected like pallet crate size, and also after that as well, in one of the other rooms they walked into, the camera was sort of like started upside down and it's all like black bubbles and buckets, and containers and tubes. But the camera started upside down and then came around to our normal eye level. And so by the time it's done that, you felt a bit like confused with the wall that you were looking at. And that was very both Alien, because to me it felt like, remember in Alien we talked about how
buckets and stuff,
remember in Alien we talked about how the alien is there, like it's hidden, but there's all this like black tubing and black wires and stuff,
the alien and you can't see it. Like this looks like icicles.
Icicles and
but
dripping.
It's later on you realise that's actually icicles.
And also 2001, because 2001 kept doing that idea of like the camera being upside down and spinning. So
I was going to point out there's a scene there after he goes a bit shonky and talks with Finch's face. Yeah, like he walks down that corridor, it was like a white cylinder, and the camera starts upside down, and he even trails his hand or something, and it rotates around. And I just looked at that and went, that's 2001.
It's totally 2001, right? Yeah, so it's cool. It's good little homage to that. And yeah, the team discovers lots of dead bodies, really, as they're like looking through all these rooms, very ominous, that there's all these you kind of seeing them. And I liked this, that they weren't really that interested in the dead bodies, were they? Until they got to that one that was all slashed up. But like, they're just like, well, just get moving.
Well, I guess
they weren't there for the dead bodies, were they?
They knew that the airlock or whatever had been broken and the power's out and it was freezing. So
everyone's dead.
Yeah, they were all sort of dead. It was just that one when they came across Ponta and he's got like the jaggedy bits out of his back of his neck, and the guy goes to touch it, and you're like, going, don't touch it. And unfortunately, the guy says, touch nothing. And you're like, yes, thank God. You were told to not touch anything.
Yeah.
But that's in the trailer, of course.
Yes.
Where he reaches down to touch it, but it cuts away before he's told not to touch anything. So you get the feeling that
he's going to touch it.
Yeah.
And Huntington, I kind of at this point thought Huntington was a bit of a leader, but I don't think he was. But he kind of sits down, he starts fixing, like there's a big mess of wires in the control room. They also, like as a group, they're questioning what's like powering. It's freezing cold, but like what is powering the station? because the ship inside is in darkness, so they're not too sure what's going on.
Generators were sort of down.
So they were unsure, like, how is the rest of it powering away, but not the ship. Two of them that were off on their own path, they sort of hear some actual noises and they head towards that sound. Always a good thing to do. They also had this little, like, that was pretty cool. They had a little thing where they're like, it would echo, it would make this weird echo noise, and they're like, well, if anyone's alive, they'll hear this. I was like, that's got to be the dumbest thing ever. Like, if you're going into an alien environment, like, surely that's a dumb thing. It's like, hello, boom, 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 boom.
Well,
we're over here.
To be fair, these guys are search and rescue.
They are.
They're not the Marines.
Looking for someone that's alive. And I guess if you think about like, someone in rubble, and I did think that, but I'm like, in the context of this movie, it seems a bit silly that they would be doing that. But
well, it's not.
Like, we're over here. Come eat us.
It does set up a bit of tension that you you're thinking that you're going, shut up, stop making that noise. Like.
That's funny. And they find Ponta, which you just mentioned, and he's just totally frozen with that weird thing in the neck and the back of his body. And then two of them, Huntington, I think, and that they head off to the generators. And then it cuts back to the two that had sort of listened to that sound, and they're kind of at a big, looks like an old bank vault in a way.
Yeah.
It's got the old-fashioned lock on the door. And they're trying to like knock and communicate, and they're sort of asking for Whit Carmichael, but there's no answer.
There's Rex who goes off to the mess hall.
Rex goes to the mess hall,
and he starts showing his flash around. This is where I was getting feelings of Event Horizon.
Yeah, this was Event Horizon.
There's like stuff hanging up, and at first you're not 100% sure what it is that is hanging up, but then one of them's clearly a human face that's been peeled.
Yes.
And there's blood and there's bits because he's using his torch so you don't see much in there.
Yeah.
And that's when the
Hannibal Lecter, isn't it? It's like this skin. And
Huntington sort of bangs away the electronics, and like this weird little pulley system starts turning with these green tubes, and power starts coming back on, and the computers fire up.
Yeah.
And there's the boss man, I think, is sitting there at the computer trying to get some sense out of it. And they say, "What are you doing?" I was just like, "Oh, do you speak Latin or Greek?" I think the guy says.
Yeah.
And again, I was thinking Event Horizon.
Yeah.
Where they're speaking Latin.
Yeah.
And he says, "No, why? That's a dead language." He says, "Exactly. That's what I'm looking at here."
Yes.
And I just remembered my job. We had this system that had been sitting there for a long time, written in Fortran. Not a modern version of Fortran either, like Fortran from the early 80s.
Oh my goodness.
And so we've replaced it because it's like Latin. It's dead, and we're going, we don't know how to fix that if it breaks.
Yeah, so
he gets a message on the computer.
He suddenly gets a message. Yeah, who are you? And the captain, I liked that. He kind of writes, we're here for a mission to rescue Whit, and then he stops himself and he starts deleting. And it's true. It's like, what if he's going to give away to an alien that,
or just an imposter?
Or an imposter or something. Is he going to give away too much information? And then he writes WC. And suddenly the ship turns on, the big fans, and everything starts melting. And as you said before, the crystals that we think are water, actually the creature starts bubbling. The blood in the face, those body parts start coming alive. And they're the ship it's purging the atmosphere, and so everything kind of gets stripped out for a minute. And then where the two were looking at that big old bank vault asking for Carmichael, that then unlocks and opens.
Wasn't that great? The way, though, that it started turning and the little flashing light on it. That's Hitchcock right there.
Yes, it is, isn't it? It's what's going to happen behind this?
Everything has suddenly, their whole environment has radically changed. Yeah. What was all dark and spooky is suddenly now, sort of bright and alive, but we don't know what forces causes it. Yeah. And this vault is slowly turning and turning and turning. And of course, the people back up, hold up guns, and they're all like, what the... So it was this great building tension. And there's just a silhouette of a dude in there. And they're like, Carmichael, show us your hands, whatever, and you're thinking,
just the shadow of him,
And it pauses long enough for you to have those questions of, is this where shit starts going down, or is this And then he does. He puts his hands up and he comes out and says he's Carmichael.
And he describes that when he arrived, everyone that he came across was super strong. They wanted to kill him, and they wanted to kind of rip their skin off. There's kind of a great line there that I think one of the female character, Morgan or something maybe, says that, oh, that's like one way to make an impression or something, like, you know. And so it's very forceful, but at the same time there's like this sort of tense standoff with the crew and him, because they're not sure if they can trust him, you know, because of the history of the place.
Well, there's always that question: is he the last one alive? Because he killed everyone.
Killed everyone, yeah.
Because he did. He even said that he flushed turn the heating off and let the cold in, and he killed everyone.
He killed everyone, yeah. But also realizing that they kind of say, well, they're here for the payload and not necessarily him.
Yeah,
you know, like he's kind of an afterthought. So he realizes that.
To be fair, the payload, they've been told, will kill everyone.
On Earth, yeah.
So Carmichael is a secondary to that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Which again, like the whole thing is like, he annihilated everyone to save himself. They've come here to stop the payload to save everyone on Earth. It's that debate, isn't it? Like, and not necessarily totally save him. So again, the whole film is questioning like, what is life worth, and which lives do you save versus which lives do maybe you let go?
That fellow,
what is life?
It was at Huntington, you reckon? He has that conversation with him and says, so how did you survive? You know, I get it. You're scared. You know, you want to save your life and it doesn't matter about anyone else. Like, it sort of sounds like he is trying to empathize, but then he's pointing out, are you actually just a selfish little prat who panicked and killed a whole bunch of people? And Carmichael's just like, no, mate. You want that payload turned off? Well, I'm going to need some help.
Yes. And so that's what he sets out to do. He says, I'll do it. Take me back to Earth, but that's the trade-off. And of course, Captain says, sure. But he starts doing his binary code, which again is nice because he's like, well, it's just simple maths. I've been here long enough. I've learned it.
ASCII and binary, and you go like, I'm sitting there going, what the hell are you talking about? That's garbage.
But also he does put that nod in there, like, I've been here a week or so. Like I've had time to play with it.
There was a comment about who Carmichael was. They said, he's very skilled and gifted and so forth, but he's taken all of these courses and done well. It looks like he's trying to be where you are now. Yeah. Like he's trying to work his way up to be some sort of an elite. And because all of these search and rescue guys are really capable. Yeah. Like, they're merely doing engineering. They're scanning stuff. They're whatever. It's just a shame that they get, taken over by aliens. Yeah.
But he starts stopping the payload, but he realizes that he has to sort of do like a manual override, trick the system so that then he can override the sort of safety systems so he can stop the payload. He also lets them know, look out the window, and reveals this massive wind farm of towers, and that's what's powering the station.
There's another Aliens thing, because in Aliens, there's a moment there where Hudson, they sort of say, oh, what's the problem? And he goes, oh, just a moment, take a look outside. And he opens up the blast things and they say, what are we looking at? And they're looking at the fusion generator, and there's like a plume of out the exhaust vent. And that's where they go, oh shit, we've got a time clock. But this one here was, okay, we can't shut the power off.
Yes,
The payload will have power unless we can do the manual override. So it was a bit of an Aliens callback, I think. Yeah. I'd love to have a little chat with old Shane about whether that was intentionally an Aliens thing. Yeah. Or whether I'm just reading into that because I love Aliens so much.
Yeah. And so Whit runs the furnace to a critical level. He tells a couple of the others, including Menzies, to go down and do the manual override, or they volunteered to go down, whatever. And that's where he has a chat with Menzies, and sort of he says he has a daughter. She's 6 years old, and
I've got a daughter. I'm a single mum with a daughter.
Yeah, and he kind of, it gives it a reason to live, doesn't it?
Which is because we didn't have enough stakes, and I think fair enough. The payload will end the Earth.
Yeah,
is a bit abstract.
Yes.
So we've also got Carmichael. He's got a pregnant wife.
Yeah, so it's very obvious.
Who clearly wants him around. Okay, that's fine. You're kind of going there.
But then all these other people,
now
what does it matter?
Yeah, we need to care about the other people. And so I really like that when they said, Menzies, he's like, I've got a daughter, she's 6. I'm due to at her science fair this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I say what I love her to the Milky Way and back, not the short way, the long way. Which makes sense when you're talking about slipstreaming.
Yes.
And when I heard that little discussion, I thought, oh, okay, so either they're going to make sure that this guy lives.
Yeah.
If Carmichael dies, this guy is the one who's going to live.
Yeah.
Because he's got the stakes. The other people didn't really have stakes. And
at this point,
at this point, you didn't really hear anything about that. So I really liked that bit.
I do too, and it does add that meaning. It also just adds a bit of personality to the fact that they're doing this big, space mission thing, doesn't it?
We get a bit more character there.
Yeah. So they do it, and it actually works, like you said earlier. We're only a third into the film, and they override it, So there's a bit of tension there. There's a bit of working out. The conveyor belt stops, the mining stops, and then it overcooks. And they pull the valves and, manage to override it. And he stops the payload. So they're all really happy. And then with that, there's this crazy zombie infected miner at the door, just standing there, breathing heavily with an axe. And he attacks the captain and stabs. And then he's blown away. And then there's another guy that runs in attacking. And, I think after a little bit of a wrestle, one of them, fires their laser gun and blood just splatters everywhere.
On everyone.
And they all, very rapidly, it was surprising how rapidly they then were infected.
Also, Carmichael had previously said it was something they were touching, some sort of liquid or something.
Yeah.
In their system or their so you knew as soon as that blood went everywhere.
Yeah.
You knew that there was either this was going to be a bit of a mental game, like The Thing. I was sort of thinking, is this going to be like The Thing, where it's has someone been infected, but we don't know who, and they're going to off people? Yeah. No, they all started going ballistic.
And there's really cool, I really liked this, is that Whit kind of he's got blood on him, and of course he's been there longer, he's seen more, he's kind of a bit more in instant shock, and he looks at his arms, and you just see the blood soaking into his arms. And I really liked that. I have not seen that really in zombie films or, an alien infested film or a bacteria organism sort of film. Normally it's a bit more traditional of them biting or, some sort of attack, whereas this was the blood soaked into the skin. And I was like, oh, that's cool, So, and he takes off, he runs.
He warns Menzies and says,
and he
stay
warns
away.
Which was a save the cat kind of moment, isn't it? It's oh, no, you stay away. And he jumps, as you mentioned before, he runs down this corridor and he jumps across, grabs hold, and you think being the hero he's going to hold on, but no, he slips and falls.
Catches himself and then falls.
Yeah.
And at first you think, he's going to fall into something soft.
Yeah.
But he hits a post on the way down and flips over, and you go, and I thought to myself,
well, he's got to be
this is
dead.
why they set up Menzies, surely.
Yeah.
Because he's got to be dead. There's no possible way.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we do get a weird, again, one of these weird cuts and flashes and memories and this flashing, cutting. Obviously you've all seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And then he wakes up hearing people calling his name.
Yeah, well, he has a weird memory of his wife, doesn't he? She's sort of saying,
"Oh yeah."
She is saying, "Don't."
Stop believing.
That's right. She's kind of come on, you got to get up, and it's a bit of an old school thing of, the character back home saying, "No, come on, that's enough. You got to get up, get up, run, move." And he's then again this he goes into this vent, and there's smoke and spraying stuff and weird lights, and he's a bit disorientated from the fall, and he's vomited a bit as well, and he's not quite right. And then all of a sudden there's a voice telling him that he can smell him and he can see him and he can hear his breathing. And it's good old Hemsworth. Hemsworth has hunted him. And he's kind of a bit confused by where it's coming from.
I also really like the hissing of the vents was very much like a living, breathing.
Yeah,
you got the feeling of something was going.
Yeah.
And I think there was a bit of a heartbeat going on in the background in the soundtrack. So,
but Hemsworth taunts him. Like there's a real taunting moment from good old Hemsworth.
Yeah.
And he's kind of and there's a great cut there as well, Surrey, where he's kind of like he looks and there's the smoke and the hissing.
Yeah.
And I think he's sort of saying like, I can hear you, I can see you, or whatever. And it's like hissing, and we see that perspective. And of course, Hemsworth comes through the smoke.
Yeah.
But then we cut to behind or over Hemsworth's shoulder, and of course, Whit is not there anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like a great moment of tension because we've just cut from one character's perspective to the other, thinking that he would still just be standing right in front of him, but in fact, he has vanished himself. So it's a cool little sort of building up on the suspense. And then he kind of like barrels into a corner, and Hemsworth is coming up on the corner, and he's laughing and he's in this maniac stage and all that sort of stuff. And then just when he's kind of like about to get good old Whit, I think it's, I was going to say Morgan, but I'm not sure now. But the other soldier just attacks and just lays into Hemsworth brutally.
Heavy gut punches, I remember.
Punches, and he falls over, and it's like in the head, and he just wipes him out.
And, and that guy just sort of wanders off in a daze.
He wanders off, and Whit grabs Hemsworth's gun and then heads to the medicine or the
labs.
Labs, yeah.
I get the feeling, I'm not sure if he was specifically looking for the labs, but he saw, and it was like biocontaminants, the biohazard warning signs, which I think these days we've kind of come to associate with, we've seen enough zombie films, enough, outbreak and contagion films to know that means bad stuff here.
Yes.
And he goes in
It looks
there.
like a science lab.
Yeah, I mean, he goes in there and there's this kind
tubes
of... It's not as destroyed as everywhere else, but there's like these containers with, bits of organ of some sort. The sort of thing you'd see... In fact, if you watch Cabin in the Woods, which I recommend you do, it's almost a science fiction.
It is. There's another Hemsworth in that film, actually. Yes.
And there's you go in there and he's got the lab laid out. There's weird organ stuff, and he first of all starts looking through the chemicals and pills, and I don't know what he's specifically looking for, but I guess he's just kind of
looking for anything,
trying to find maybe antibiotics or some sort of. Is there something that's been set up to treat this? I love the way he puts his hand in that jar of goop, and he goes and he like shakes his hand up. You go, it's just you're in a lab, you're just gonna shove your hand in a goop. Come on. And then he finds the notes. He searches around, but he finds the clipboard, which talks about, it's this primordial ooze, which is some sort of organic, proto-organism, which fosters, rapid evolutionary traits and so forth. And the entire planet they're on is just this one big blob of it.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, cool. And then it goes on to say that it exhibits predatory behavior. When it takes over someone, it's like it's looking for a host to learn or grow into or evolve with. And the infections from total consumptions between 3 seconds and 2 hours, depending on emotional stability. And it's quite interesting. And then it's like the perfect organism. And I always wonder, what the hell does that mean? But I guess it's a nice sort of thing in that it makes it sound as if it doesn't have any chemical weaknesses, it doesn't have any biological weaknesses. Yeah. Although I would challenge, and I'm going to ask any biologists or xenobiologists out there, if they could tell me what a perfect organism was. Do we have such a thing on Earth? Am I a perfect organism?
No. Humans are totally fallible, aren't they?
Geez, what a shame. But anyway, so he reads this and the notes become
ranty and ravey.
Sort of, something from the notepad of 7. It's not
which is also great raised in the States, because you kind of like, those notes did start off very formal and like, there was experiments and that, and you kind of it's obviously pure exposition for us as an audience, but it's also like once it gets to that cray notes, it's kind of like, well, this scientist went crazy.
It's cool that it also explains why the payload would have wiped out Earth.
Yeah.
Not because it would have ignited the atmosphere or, explosion. I think he says this later, it's highly combustible, but not the way they thought.
Yes.
Or hoped, yeah. It's like it would have, if it had landed in the ocean, it would have just taken over all life, and who knows where that would have ended up.
Yeah.
So he goes from the lab.
And then Menzies comes out of the cupboard.
Yeah, because he hasn't found his drugs or whatever. Menzies comes out and they have a struggle, and he holds a gun to his head and says, hey, what's going on? Show me your features.
And he does have a red eye. Like, he's starting to get the one red eye.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, look, you don't look too well. Don't look too well. We've been going through shit, blah, blah, blah.
And it reminds me of his, I remember about
saved
your daughter.
You.
And,
yeah. And he also helped him. He told him to run and all that. So they kind of like, they have a moment. And this is where he tells him that because the whole planet is a living organism, like, if they had enough time, they could also become a whole human. Like, they could become...
Which was great, because that was immediately... Because I was still wondering, how the hell did he survive that fall?
Yeah.
And then, you're going, oh, has he become a whole alien? That's when I was thinking back to the opening scene where Captain Johansson and Lieutenant Philippa, or whatever it was, everyone was around.
Everyone's yelling.
Who's actually dead or crazy, and they're clearly not in the start. They're clearly not in the start.
No.
So then I was thinking, oh, okay. So now we do have a bit of the Thing movie sort of situation here, where is Carmichael actually an alien?
Mm. So they're having that moment, and then this is where Rex, the soldier, bursts in, and this has to be a bit of a apocalypse now. Homage, like he bursts in as a crazy motherfucker soldier, doesn't he? He's got like the strikes down the face of the blood.
I was thinking of Rutger Hauer in Blade Runner.
Yeah, well, with maybe
the claw hand, and like the holding the gun and the claw hand, and like what is life?
Yeah,
that same question.
Well, it's a similar thing, isn't it?
Or same line of questioning that I can't remember the character's name, but Rutger Hauer's character in Blade Runner kind of had that same thing with a messed up arm and a gun and. What is life? Are we really alive? That sort of thing.
Yeah. And maybe that's the reference. I don't know, but it's like it was a soldier that's gone crazy, basically.
Yeah, and he was very convincing. I loved his performance in that.
Yeah, I did too.
Because he would hold the gun to Menzies' head and saying bits and pieces, and they're reminding him, "No, we're your friends, we're your teammates." And there's that Carmichael is repeating, you can make a choice.
Yeah.
Your choice is yours. You do get to make a choice, which I really liked. That as an effective sort of smart way of talking to him.
Mm.
And then he'd turn away and kind of go a bit weird and have a bit of a cackle and point the gun back and what is life? Yeah, Carmichael. He said a few other crazy things, but he ends up saying, Carmichael, what is life? And Carmichael says, like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. What is life? And then finally he answers, Life is the choice. And he shoves the gun in his head. And my bloody internet connection froze for a moment with just a picture of his gun in the head. And then it came good and blew out the top of his head. Falls over.
He does. It was a great scene, but that one.
Menzies got covered in blood, of course.
Yeah, Menzies gets covered in blood, automatically starts getting infected. And Whit's like, well, we can't save each other. We can't help each other. And Menzies like abusing him and changing. And then they just have a good old-fashioned shootout, don't they? They just pull their guns on each other, and Menzies dies. And then this is where Whit has one of those great moments with the editing where he's kind of on one side of the screen and then the other, and instantly. Yeah. So it's two flashes, and he's trying to like shake himself sober kind of thing.
Twitches his head.
And he's not quite there. He really has a moment in the sun. Anyway, he reaches Huntington, who's kind of,
he's recording something. He's using the voice bit, leaving him, and he turns around and tells him, I'm talking to my children.
Yeah.
And he's sort of thinking, I don't think you are. And he finishes off this message about how he loves and worship it. And Carmichael says, what are you doing? It's a voice transmission. but that's going to take, I know it's going to take centuries to get there, but I had to do it. And I thought that was a really human moment there, that he just had to, it's his message in a bottle, he says.
Yeah.
And he had to throw the bottle.
Yeah.
And fair enough. I think there's a beautiful little moment that he, centuries later, someone will come across that transmission and send it to Earth, so it will eventually get there.
And I guess, you've just made me think, and it's even the same previously with the soldier, and even then Menzies, like, asking for help, that, and Whit as well, that all of them, they're overtaken by the alien, but then they've still got these human parts to them.
Mm.
It's not like they're, like in some of the, like, zombie films, that, like, then you're just a complete zombie. Whereas here, they're kind of like, even when they're psychopathic, like the Rex, the soldier, when he's going to wants to blow Menzies' head off, but he's questioning life, isn't he? He's questioning what is life.
He's getting more deep and philosophical.
Yeah, so it's not like it's just like the alien has overtaken everything and then you're no longer you, like there's some part of you still holding on for a little bit. Yeah. Which is actually really interesting, I think. He tells him that he's already asked for extraction, but it's 8 hours away.
Early extraction.
Yeah. And Whit's like, well, we're not going to make it that long. We saw in the scientist's notes that the longest was
2 hours.
2 hours, and they need a medic. And this is where we do get Huntington kind of gets on a loop about the medic. Yeah. And
Claire's the medic.
Claire's the medic. Go find Claire, And straight away I'm like, well, she's probably dead, And they have this weird, tense conversation that you went into detail before, where they're kind of like, they're sitting next to each other laughing, and then they're like maniacally, like kind of in each other's faces, and then one's standing up talking about something, Huntington's talking about a medic, and then they're like,
you had the gun to the back of my head, you want me to trust you now?
I didn't trust you. It's like, well, why should I trust you now? Like they were having this whole like real random ass kind of conversation. It was like a drunken
conversation from... universities. I think
it was. And so they have this weird tense and really Whit's trying to convince him to go back to the lab and find the medic, and he doesn't want to go.
Somebody give them more time. They're trying to find something to slow this down, is what he's looking for.
And that's right. That's what Whit wants. He wants some sort of drug to kind of slow it down, or is there some way? We then cut to Claire, and she's actually like extracting blood, isn't she? She's pumping blood out of her body.
She's doing something weird.
Yeah, and she's covered in blood. She doesn't look
the
well.
med bay does not look like a place you're going to get better in.
No, it looks horrible actually. It's covered in blood. She's covered in blood.
It looks like a birthing chamber.
It does, and there's a weird pattern as well on her back. Like she's got a weird ridge going down.
Soccer ball going on.
Yeah. Anyway, Morgan comes in, who's one of the other soldiers, and he sort of says, and they hinted at this earlier that he sort of had been a bit close with Claire, but not given us much information. But he kind of comes in and he kisses her, and he's like, oh, it's got to be the three of us. And she actually says, no, it's only, I've gotten rid of that. Like, I got rid of the baby.
It was in the baby.
It was in the baby. I got rid of the baby. And he kind of like breaks down, and they have a bit of a standoff.
Well, Morgan's also a bit shonky. He's
totally out of it.
He doesn't have a hand anymore. Now it's like a macy club thing that's dripping in blood.
Yeah.
So, and what have we done? What's happened to us? And he says, nothing has happened to us. and this is another one of those things that happens off screen.
It is, and so that's good.
He goes, rah, and sort of comes at her, and she's got the little knife. And
she rahs back.
It's off screen. We hear some screaming going on, and there's a few of these things that happen. And geez, where was I reading about that? I was watching one of these YouTube videos that someone was dissecting filmmaking, and they're talking about action or something or other, taking stuff off screen.
Yeah,
like this, where I think it was more powerful. For example, when Ponta gets pushed over and shatters.
Yeah.
It was more powerful to have him shatter off screen and just a few red crystals fly up. So you know what's happened. You hear that sound, you see the red crystals, and you go, okay, that's pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
And this one here is this scream, and there's another couple there where there was fighting or shooting or something, which just sort of happens off screen. You just hear the effects of it. And in this case, you just know there's going to be something horrible, brutal there. There's no need to see it.
And to me, the expectation was probably that, Claire's been annihilated.
Yeah, well, he's got that big mace fist.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd just thump away with that. That's what I'd do. I'd be out just hitting everyone with it. Be like, fist bumping, other mace fists and weird things like that.
Anyway, Whit arrives into the medic centre, the blood-soaked medic centre, followed by Huntington. He's like right behind him, creepily.
And then he looks around and sees Morgan and he goes, medic!
That's right.
And has a chuckle and you go, oh, Jesus Christ.
I know. And they kind of see flashes of death and blood and they see sort of bits quickly. And then Claire is actually still alive, barely. Medic. And Whit pleads with her, like he's like, tell me something, anything, like something stupid, something silly, something crazy. What's the craziest thing that you'd ever do? And she speaks in... I can't quite remember.
Don't know.
Now.
Could have been
Vietnamese or is it Mandarin?
Who knows? It's hard to. It could have been Japanese or Korean.
She speaks in another language than English, and then dies. Blocks out. Huntington then goes, oh, well, it's just you and me. And so then suddenly he puts the gun back to the head of Whit, and Whit fights him back. And at this point, then Whit's both eyes have turned red.
Yeah, he's gone.
And he kind of fights back and then runs away, and he escapes to behind a ladder, and then Huntington comes out and is like, oh, I thought we were going to be friends. And in a real sort of like, psycho... dramatic way.
Yeah, it wasn't even in a I'm trying to scare you sort of way.
No.
It was just he's just totally lost the plot.
There's no plot.
He doesn't appreciate what the situation is or what's going on. He's not trying to scare him or doing that. He's just
he puts his gun down. That's what he literally puts his gun. He goes, I don't even have a gun.
Yeah, and it was interesting because then Carmichael drops down the ladder and Huntington walks up and stops, and there's like the weird drips and things, and one sort of looks like a finger or a snake or something kind of looks up at him, and he
talks to it.
He acknowledges it.
Yeah.
And then I thought he was going to touch it or something.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He drops down the ladder. And then this is where we have this secondary sort of wacky biffo where they clearly both have been infected, and they're clearly both of the leadership type. Because I said, they're emotionally stable and it's looking for leaders to lead the evolution. So both of these people clearly fit that state because they haven't got weird mutations, but they're both strong and durable because they're just having like a superhero battle.
Yeah, they are.
And it really looks like Carmichael's just been battered down and he's totally out for the count.
Yeah.
And, Huntington says, medic, and gets a bit funny. And then Carmichael suddenly has like a second wing, but you can't tell the time span involved because you get these hard flashes between. And in fact, later on, after he commits suicide, remember those spoilers we had, after he commits suicide and is resurrected, he's back there and he says, how long till we're out of here? And Johansson says, we're out in 5 hours. Because that would be bad. He was told it was 8 hours to extraction, 5 hours, about 3 hours of pissing around. Yeah. No, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you're going, okay, so you've just lost 7 hours.
Yes.
Or thereabouts, so 7 or 8 hours somewhere in there you've lost, which makes you think, how long did he spend in this fight?
Yeah.
And the conversation, which is like flashing.
Yeah.
Because then he would smash Huntington down and like get him up against the rail.
Yeah.
And then you get this sort of cut flash. Suddenly Huntington would be up fighting him back as if nothing had
throwing
happened.
him over the rail.
And it wasn't until finally he wraps a cord around his neck and chokes him and then does the classic neck break action, which I'm not convinced is a real thing. I've been to a chiropractor and they do that to you.
Yeah.
I've never once died.
Yeah.
Or have I? Maybe he's just a really good chiropractor.
That's right.
Who knows? But yeah, so he fights Huntington. It finally does overcome him and strangle him to death, which is
pretty gruesome death.
Pretty gruesome. Yeah. Kills him, leaves him in the water. He floats about for a bit, and then he crawls out. And
he's got the photo of the wife.
Photo of the wife that sort of sustains him a bit, and it clearly gives him his. This is your B story, giving inspiration for the ending.
Yeah. And
then he sets up a recording on a loop.
Yeah. And
he does this little monologue, which is really cool. I loved this this whole thing there, which is like, it's basically exposition saying, here's the theme of the story recounted in another way.
Yeah.
Where he's talking about these aliens. He says, I know you can hear me, and you've lost. You found all the bad things out of humans, but you could have equally have taken any of our parts. You could have taken the good parts. We could have grown up together. We could have talked. We could have become more than what we are, each of us, And it's almost a Star Trek moment where Jean-Luc Picard gives some sort of rousing speech about how it thinks. Yeah. But and he says, you basically screwed the pooch. You failed. You brought out the bad parts.
Yep.
And it's just, you failed.
And essentially that's what he is saying in that speech, that, you focused on the worst parts of humans instead of the better parts.
And also the present. You're only ever thinking about now. Yeah. It's selfish and short-sighted. Yeah. Which I quite like, because we know that really this monologue is kind of berating humans in general and other things. And I think there's a very strong religious theme through here too. Never is there's no characters with God beliefs. No one brings up, unlike Event Horizon, where there's it actually does obviously religious. Yeah, there's even cathedral shaped doorways and stuff, and crosses and crucifixes. No, none of that. But nonetheless, this whole journey is kind of a religious journey of trials and tribulations. There's the worst parts, the temptations, the harrowings, whatever. And then, of course, at the very end, we get a sacrifice saying, hey, you Romans, you've missed the point. Yep. As it were. And then resurrection.
Resurrection, yeah.
In fact, someone even says the word resurrected. It's just very quickly cut in there. There's resurrected. And you can't say the word resurrection or resurrected without meaning to induce religious thought. Yeah. But the really good thing was here, much like Luke Spark in Occupation, he brought up the whole, colonialism, didn't bother harping on about it. It's just like, hey, I'm aware of this. Yep. And it's something for you to think about, and maybe this will promote some discussion. And this as well is they use the word resurrection, I'm pretty sure, just so it's yep, there's religion possibility here, something for you to think about. Is this, man overcoming temptation of the devil, or is this, I was looking at more as the alien force was like God, because it's life creating. It's bringing about life and creation in that sense. But it's, and this is kind of man saying, hey, God, you're looking at all the bad stuff. Yeah. You're only looking at right now. You're bringing your flood, you're bringing your plagues, and you're not seeing the bigger picture. Yeah. And you've lost. And so, he slashes open his wrist the correct way as well, I know. So he doesn't do across the wrist. As we all know by now, we've seen enough movies and so forth.
Yeah, you go across.
Across your wrist just cuts your tendons and is a cry for help. Up your arm, you mean business. Yeah. And that's what it did. It's this pool of blood and his repeating message going on saying you failed and all the rest of it. And this was just so cool the way it all just flowed down. And so again, I was thinking back to the first scene. So everyone has died. Yeah. I'm interested to see how they're going to pull this out. Yeah. Whether it's, how well. And they pulled it off well.
Yeah, they did.
Because the slime came down and kind of went on people. Yeah. And the blood reversed direction and came back up. And, sure enough.
The slime multiplied. And
wakes up. And there's
the blood's all dried. Everything's dried up.
The other Philippa, Lieutenant Philippa is the clothes are still all messed up and there's white blood clean off the face and Morgan's come out and Claire is taking the last of the blood off her face and Johansson's looking at the cut slash in his shirt going, you can see everyone's confused. So they all either remember totally or they just sort of remember parts. And they all come out and I think they look a bit sheepish at each other, what was that all about?
And I killed you.
And everyone's kind of cool with Carmichael. Yeah. Because they were all suspicious of him at first, and now they're all kind of, nice work, man. Yeah. Thanks. I think they kind of recognise that he did get them brought back to life.
Yeah, I mean, it's as I said before, it's not completely spelled out whether they know exactly what happened, or whether they'd have these like weird memories, or they just, it's like hungover. She even says that. One of them says like, I've got the worst hangover of the century, like, are they just all a bit disorientated with a weird memory of it?
Is it like a big night afterwards where you're kind of going, did we go to that pub? Was that last night? Or was that a previous time? Or did
you put a gun to my head at some point?
Oh, and the answer is always yes.
Yeah. And we were arguing, and then we ended up in the medic. We ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, so what happened there? I was like, there's something about jelly beans. I can't remember what that was.
And it was, like, it's not exactly spelled out whether that's the case or whether they actually are like, yeah, sorry, whoops, I did stab you in the head.
The really nice bit, I think, which for me brought this all together a bit, was just as they're standing around waiting to
be extracted,
rip out, slipstream out, and Carmichael looks up and he sees these
that's a nice
watery
moment.
figures sort of come out, humanoid goop.
Yeah.
And that one of them has the photo, which is, I guess, is the symbol of this is the hope and the love and the family and the commitment and the loyalty and some of the good features.
We're picking this moment,
And he holds that, and you see Carmichael. He's kind of like, yeah, okay, good. I'm glad you've got that.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would have liked to keep the photo, but it's a very short moment. It's only a few seconds long where he sees these figures hold it. But that's that moment of hope, I think, where you go, okay, hey, they were kind of moved.
Yeah.
And they've lost many hours. We don't know how long any part of that worked, but there's about 8 hours that this conversation, meeting Claire, fight, resurrection occurred within. And you got that feeling that, okay, these aliens that they have evolved. It's still a tremendously dangerous place and we should never go here again, which is what Johansson says. Yes, we'll never come back here. And they flash back, and then we get a scene from the start again where they're being questioned.
Hostile yelling and screaming.
Slowly, each person gets cleared till it's Carmichael there. And we know he's going to be the troublesome one because he was the longest survivor there, but he was also the last one.
Yeah.
And is
he him or is he actually an alien?
Is he an alien?
Still doubting.
Back, And then finally the tension builds. Finally, he's like, no, he's cleared.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is this going to be one of the movies where it sort of ends with him, turn the camera, go bah, and something happens, and then it cuts to black.
Or like turn and his hand is watery,
it cuts to black, as you're left. But no, he's cleared, and then he goes home to his wife. You're still not sure of what the repercussions of this is going to be, but it ended on a hopeful note, and they could easily have left it on a horror note.
Yeah,
and
I
appreciate that.
I think that's my, going back to warning and hope. Like the part that is hope is basically that the aliens do get stirred by his emotional speech to the point of like, oh, maybe we have picked the wrong side. These guys will bring them back to life or resurrect them, and we will take on the better side of humanity.
We'll give the other side a shot.
Yeah, we'll give the other side a shot, and obviously as a more evolved species. And I mean, I did write down like ghost-like alien, like you just saying that religious side, they're not, maybe this is an example of, they are aliens, but maybe it is more connecting to God, that they are in fact like angels or spirits or something, like that, otherworldly.
Now that you say it, it almost reverses it because, the whole thing in the Bible, the Christian Bible, is God made humanity in his own image.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking, hang on, these aliens made themselves from man's image.
Man's image, yeah.
So who's the God here? Is Carmichael, he sacrificed himself, he was resurrected.
Yeah.
And now these guys are in his image. Is it sort of it's and that's
full
what
circle.
I really like about this, because none of that, there is no, if they had thrown one of these people in here to be a religious preachery type person, they just would have been over the top.
Yeah.
But it was just, if you weren't looking for anything, you would just go, oh, okay, that's kind of freaky. But, I was sort of really thinking about, I was really quite moved to philosophy by the way that the cuts editing and the discussion about what is life, it's a choice. And, then his final speech and then that final word, I was wondering, is this going towards a bit of a religious flavour? Is that being thrown in there? And then someone used the word resurrection and I went, okay, he's definitely that's one of the thoughts that needs to be in there. And that's why I really like this film. And I think if the right people got to see this, this would become a cult classic.
Yeah.
Like it's well put together.
Yep.
The costumes, the special effects, the acting,
sets.
the sets, the dialogue. It's really good. There are a couple of bits where maybe some of the editing could have been less jumpy. Like there's one or two scenes that sort of jumped a bit too much for me, but then I don't know, maybe it didn't. Maybe that's what it's meant to be. So it's, it's not really a criticism so much as just I was getting a bit too much of it. Going to have seizures from the no, but yeah, and so as a result, this movie is moved right up there, and I'm still talking about it, still thinking about it. It's up there with a lot of these other films like Pitch Black, where I still have these. Pitch Black sort of touched on a. It went from this sort of action horror science fiction, but it also had a bit of a philosophical bent in there about what is redemption, what is good, what is evil, and let me think. What are some of these other movies we've had like this as well? The Beyond touched a bit on some of these heavy themes.
Tau as well, again, like talking about that technology and even...
and there was even that touch in The Occupation with the colonization.
Yeah, that's right.
And, the fact that those aliens, they were coming down there with loved ones.
Yes.
They weren't just soldiers come to a thing. But, and these sorts of elements in science fiction, that's just poor fires.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a creature in the dark, is it? It's something that's much more substance.
Which is very good too.
Let's there's nothing wrong with the creature in the dark, but there's more substance to this idea, that there's a little bit more, like it's touching on evolution and possibly God and possibly, humanity versus, the dark side of humanity.
You could make a series out of this.
You could easily.
By having that Slipstream, you've introduced this
world
world.
building. Yeah.
You could, like Stargate
was the same.
Was similar where they had this portal that allowed them to go anywhere in the universe, sort of thing, like Doctor Who with his TARDIS could just turn up anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. You can go anywhere at any time.
Any sort of science fiction scenario you want to pit them against, you could
definitely
with this backdrop of this alien proto goo. Yeah. Perhaps they come across other... but anyway, that's
so you've really talked that up. A lot of positives. Is it going to go high up on your ladder? Again, I mean, our ladder idea is like maybe a viewing experience for an audience. If you come across and have a look at our ladder, you could start at the bottom and watch that film all the way up to the top, and it'd be a good, real sort of immersive experience into like science fiction story and learning about the genre.
Is interleave some of the classics... Because every fifth episode we do a classic.
We do.
And I think I would very much like to put together my playlist, if you like.
Yeah, that's right.
Interspersing. So you can't just go in cold to 2001.
No.
Because it can be a bit heavy. And you could go in something a bit lighter. You could go in with Predator or Demolition Man. And because that's introduced a bit of insight with some humor and action. But this one here, definitely up in the top there. It's above Tau. Sorry, AI computers becoming human. I do love them, but it's up there above Tau.
Yeah. For me, I reckon it's coming in kind of in that, probably in the top 5. I reckon on my one. Again, not saying that number 1 is the best ever film. I think I've got Oblivion up the top of mine, but it's just saying that would be a good viewing playlist. I like the word playlist actually now that you've said that. And for me, I think on my ladder would be like starting actually at the bottom rung, like you'll climb up the ladder. Yeah. So start with that one and work way up your top. And I do like this idea of maybe mingling in the classic. But for me, it's also like, well, then you could also look at the classics. I would start at that bottom one and work my way up. But yeah, for this particular one, Infini, I didn't know anything about this, which is quite often the case. Like some of these films you and I have seen before, we might have seen them years ago, or we've seen them, in our own time, and then now we're watching them for Space Brains. But I didn't really know anything about this film, and again, it was one of these like surprise. Oh, this is another Australian science fiction, and it's a couple of years old now, 5 years. But it's readily available on Netflix, so anyone can have a look at it, and it really stands up, you know, like, I mean, like, I was very impressed with a lot of the cinematic features of this film. The storytelling, the editing really stood out to me. So yeah, I put it, for me, it's coming in kind of in my, like, in those top 5 rungs. So check out our, we probably need to do a little bit of a revision and put it on our socials. We've got it on our websites, but we probably need to put together so it's on the socials as well. Sorry.
Maybe like episode 50, we'll do like a special where we'll recap over this ladder. And like we'll do a classic, but we'll also have a little section where we'll recap over the ladder and put it into our playlist order of like, this is going to introduce you into science fiction gently. Yeah. And then you work your way through some of the deeper themes and some of the zanier action and science concepts. Yes. So you're not coming straight in on like I said, you don't come straight on 2001 or the Beyond where you're hit, bam, here's a whole bunch of science and science fiction. You can start off with a bit lighter pace, something introducing your way in there and build up to some of these bigger ideas and concepts and things. It's just
we'll need to put that a bit more of that together, I think. So what about the science in this? I mean, are you going to talk about how slipstreaming is readily available on your laptop?
No, I told you it's my next computer.
It's the next one's coming.
Yes, my laptop's 5 years old, which is the same vintage as this movie. But no, this whole idea of life coming from outer space and evolution being helped along is not, it's not a fantasy.
No.
but it's not. So there's been a number of thoughts. So, for example, when Earth is formed, the Earth was formed, with planets in general, we've got a second generation star. It's not the first star. Our first star blew up or didn't exist or we weren't there, whatever you want to say. But the point is that the Earth started coalescing out of garbage. Sorry, all you astronomers out there. Rock and so forth. Material from other exploded stars, basically. Everything had to have come from the fusion furnaces of gigantic stars, bigger stars than what we've got. The sun being this orangey, almost red colour, it peaks at iron on the periodic table. So anything more dense than iron, so you're talking like all the way up to uranium. Our sun cannot produce uranium. So any uranium in the Earth's crust has come from interstellar reaches, like gigantic, collapsed, giant stars, that sort of thing. So the planets will form and we get this boiling hot ball because when it all crushes together, there's a huge amount of force. And for millions of years, possibly the Earth's been around for a couple of billion years or something, maybe in most of that time, the Earth was totally uninhabitable by life. It was a hot, cooked, dry rock. Water obviously can't exist in that situation. So it had to be delivered after the Earth cooled enough for liquid water to remain, or ice to remain, whichever way you look at it, but probably liquid water. So that comes from flying comets. So the building blocks of life to start on Earth did come from interstellar debris. After Earth formed as a rocky mass, we must have then gotten these chemicals, and we have found in comets and asteroids basic organic compounds like aldehydes and so forth, which, given the right conditions, could combine to form life or lifelike chemicals, materials. So this is not an outrageous thing. So the idea that there's a whole planet that is just this protoplasmic goo, it kind of rings true on that idea of maybe something landed on a planet and it, have you heard of the grey goo theory of nano machines? No. Okay. Well, so there's this thing. So you imagine if you could make a nano robot, like a robot that's smaller than a grain of sand type thing, capable of breaking down material and constructing additional copies of itself to continue its work. Right? So that would be a seemingly sensible thing to make your nanobots able to do, because there'd be an attrition as they do their stuff. They'd break down. They'd need to be able to repair themselves. But what if that got out of control and it would just take anything it touched. It would break it down into its components and rebuild it as another little copy of itself, which would break down whatever it touched into components. And you end up basically, your planet will become this grey goop, which is just all nanomachines that are just broken down everything and turned into nanomachines, which then just continuously break each other down to turn into more. Like, it's just, it's a grey goop.
It's an endless loop of...
And that's what I think this planet here is the biological equivalent of that, where some sort of, proto-biology arrived on a planet and began replicating sort of in an uncontrolled way, and the entire planet has become this goop.
Yeah.
And you could imagine then, let's say, some of this proto-goop that landed on that planet turned that landed on Earth, but it evolved slightly differently and became us. And all of our life.
Yeah.
So it's not a crazy idea, but here is a crazy idea. But I'm going to present it as possible, even though it's a crazy idea. Yeah, so 2018, we've got this idea that not only did life get seeded here from other planets, but entirely possible that octopus were brought here, they're aliens, brought here as frozen, fertilized eggs on board a comet. And there's this thing called the Cambrian explosion, about 540 million years ago, is the sudden massive number of observable fossils and the traces of life in our, planetary record.
Yeah.
It's like it was nothing. Suddenly,
bam,
huge diversity of life. And there's a lot of speculation about what this could be. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that 540 million, when they say 540 million years ago, it's not like, Tuesday, the 2nd of October, 540 million BC. Yeah. It's over a course of millions of years still.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can really comprehend how long 540 million years is. In fact, it's so long that there could have been several highly advanced, intelligent, technological civilizations on this planet before us, and we would have no trace of them. Yeah. That's how long it would be. That's another story for another time.
It certainly is.
It's very interesting. But this one here, the idea is that there's this big explosion, massive diversity of life. Octopus came into that about 135 million years post that.
Mm-hmm.
And their DNA shows such incredible evolution. They've got some 33. The genome of an octopus shows a staggering level of complexity with 33,000 protein coding genes more than is present in Homo sapiens. So they demonstrate a greater level of useful evolution than humans. And that often we get confused by this term, more evolutionary advanced. But in terms of biology, what it's saying is there's more goop in the in the octopus DNA that is not harmful to them and in fact helps them than there is in humans. And humans, we think we're like the top of the thing. So there's this idea then, okay, so if the octopus also then has these evolutionary traits of, shape changing and color changing. Its eyes operate differently. Their eyes independently evolve. So that creationist theory where the eyeball is such a perfect thing, it's actually evolved about 3 or 4 times. The octopus is one of them, and it has a unique eye set still, even though our eyes that we have and cow eyes and so forth are the predominant ones these days. They've also got a lot of intelligence. They only live 6 months to 2 years or something. The longest living species lives 5 years. Yeah. And yet they are able to perform, great feats of relative intelligence. I say relative intelligence. They're not writing Shakespeare. They've got a year to live. So, they don't have time to formulate a novel or a screenplay. As we know, that takes more than a year. That's certainly from birth to death, you've got a bit of time there. But they are able to, unlock puzzles, open jars. There was a case, they're finding Dory, Finding Nemo number 2, where there's that octopus that walks around in the lab, as based off a real story where an octopus was in the quarantine lab with fish, and they're coming in, and these rare fish that they were quarantining before they could put into the aquarium were starting to go missing. And they thought someone was stealing them because they're very valuable and they're rare. And so they put up security cameras, and they caught the octopus climbing out of its tank, going over, plucking fish out of that tank and eating them, and then climbing back into its tank. It's like, what the hell? So, and this is a creature, as I said, it lives for maybe 6 months to a year. And yet it's, you know, it's got multiple hearts and it regrows limbs. It has all of these adaptations which don't appear, you know, the time scale over which they evolved is unprecedented, and they don't appear in that combination in any other prior form. So there's this idea then that they are an
alien,
and introduced that they've already evolved before they arrived to Earth and then continued from here. And one of the ways would be frozen eggs. The other way was a retrovirus into earthly squids, which would then mutate like this goop in this movie, a squid into an octopus, which, you know, squid are not intelligent like octopus. Octopus are really very clever and capable and have a lot of skills that some cuttlefish have, some squid have, but the octopus has the whole package.
Has the whole package, yeah.
Yeah, those big bulbous heads and the funny weird snorkels. And they look alien as well because they've radial symmetry with no bones, no endo or exoskeleton. They've got like a beak, but yeah, they're wacky creatures.
They are.
But of course, all of that has sort of somewhat been discredited as being, you know, we've mapped out the genome of an octopus and it's entirely possible. All of it is possible to be done here on Earth. And we are still talking about 135 million years during which it... So...
Yeah, still a fair
but it is something that a fair number of people sort of speculated on. And it does raise this interesting idea that could a retrovirus come down and mutate and evolve people?
Yeah.
And a retrovirus as opposed to a non-retrovirus, the virus gets into your cell and replicates itself, and that's what causes disease.
Yep.
A retrovirus replicates itself by injecting a portion of its own DNA replicating coding into the cell's DNA, rather than just having, you know, loose bits of RNA to encode new copies of itself. It actually modifies the DNA. So if you were to get an embryo, which is just like a couple of cells, and infect it with a retrovirus, then every cell in that resulting body, assuming they didn't die of AIDS, which is a retrovirus, which is why I said that, would have that virus encoded in its very DNA. And that's there's a number of therapies they're trying to make where they basically modify your DNA to get rid of congenital issues, like anemia, what's that one? That's leukemia. That's the one, not anemia. Leukemia. So sickle cell leukemia. Yeah. So like if you could introduce a virus into your bones that stopped making the sickle cell platelets, then you'd be sweet.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, this whole idea, because I was thinking of that when they had this ball of goop, and I love the idea the whole planet was
a ball of goop.
A ball of goop, and it was just this this organic material that had just taken over and multiplied, because people have put forward these sorts of theories as possible origins of various life, because octopus is very strange.
Yes, it is.
So that's where I was going with all that. And my wife watched My Octopus Teacher.
Yeah, I've seen
which is
that.
what actually alerted me to the actual lifespan of octopus.
Yeah.
Because when she said, it only lives for a year, and I went, that sounds a bit weird. I would have thought maybe 10 years. Like, because some fish live 80, 100 years.
Yeah.
Lobsters can live... I think they found a lobster out near New Zealand that's 180 years old or something crazy.
Well, like when we
just break off its tail and count its rings.
When we did the lobster, that was something we found out. Like, they just can grow and grow and grow, technically.
It's unknown, unclear.
Yeah, exactly.
What the maximum lifespan of a lobster is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I looked it up and confirmed it. There's a species of giant octopus that lives for up to 5 years.
Yeah.
But almost all of them, except for like one species, breeds once, mates one time, and then dies.
Yeah, and that's that movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what happens to that octopus.
Yes. And I've chosen not to watch it because my wife cried just talking about it. And I went, I don't know if I think I've learned all I need out of that. So
it's a very nice documentary in that it's not just, it's actually about what the man goes through, and he's a filmmaker, and the fact that he had a bit of a moment in his life where everything went pear-shaped, and then he went back to the ocean because that was his kind of calming space, and he discovers this octopus. But yeah, I was shocked on a couple of those things, like the fact that he says that like the lifespan is up to 12 months, and then it breeds and has all these babies, and most of the babies don't make it because they're just little tiny eggs, and so everything eats them, and then maybe one or two does that. But even in that film, like you said, the octopus, in the lab, that's what that octopus also does, because he goes diving at night because he wants to know how does it get away from all the shark predators, and it goes into the shallows, and it's basically on top of the rocks, like it's out of the water. And he's like, isn't that incredible? Like, so when it's nighttime and the sharks are like ready to eat it, it goes, no, stuff you, I'm just going to climb up out of the water onto the rocks and just kind of like hover in the waves so it gets enough water to survive. It's like, wow, like this is an incredible creature,
Yeah, it's amazing.
And that's what that film also shows you, is some of the hunting things that the sharks do and what it does to kind of repel that, in different ways.
It loses an arm, as I understand it.
It does, yeah. That's very sad, yeah. So I can understand your wife.
Except my son watched it, and at that scene, again, my wife was crying again.
Yeah. I think
she's
wife
a sensitive
cried.
soul, and my son Elliot is 8 years old. He just says, "Don't worry, Mum, it'll grow back." He says, "How do you know that?" He says, "Octopus can regrow their arms."
Yeah, that's right.
And so he wasn't phased at all. He's just like, it'll regrow it. Just as plain and simple.
Yep.
Yeah, so anyway, there we go. So it was just wonderful. And I'm going to leave it over to you now. So I think I've demonstrated my excitement on grey goo and proto or primordial ooze and all things like that.
Yeah, well, look, I won't, as normal, I won't take too long on the technicalities. I think a lot of this we've actually touched on a bit more tonight in detail as we've gone through, which has been a bit better. But I liked the tight cinematography of this. So really tight shots. We're in on the face. There's lots of kind of camera movement with it. There's also what we've been talking about, those homages to Alien, to 2001. I mean, the 2001 reference is so clear when you've, like you and I only watched it, that, like literally Huntington sort of walks down and it's a bit disorientated and the camera just totally rotates
He's
around.
got his hands above his head. And it's almost like
it's a cylinder
walking on his hands, and it's like, and I saw that and I went, having seen 2001 now, I said, well, that's 2001. And it's doing it for a similar effect of introducing us to an alien environment. I think it's like, you thought you knew gravity? Think again. But
yes, that's right. So that was really clever. There's also really nice, so super close that there's that real blur factor going on. With Whit, there's quite a few moments where right in on his eye, even his nose and mouth is just really out of blur and depth, which I liked. The sound as well, I thought that use of the creepy voiceovers, added to that disorientation. Like I was joked a bit about when Hemsworth hunts Whit, it's very, he's in the vent and he's hearing those voices, but he's trying to sort of shake himself sober again. But the voices really played a key part in the mystery and the suspense of that, and I really liked that.
And I liked it when we got shots of the other characters saying things, but it was Carmichael's voice.
Yes,
that was saying the words. So which really got that whole. Like they're all connected. It was the alien had them, and the alien, and I think that's like the alien could hear them. Yeah, because it was all of them.
Well, to be honest, Surrey, I actually was thinking at some point there he's going to realize that they're kind of all connected or something. Like there'd be some sort of communal consciousness in a way. And in fact, that was my thinking towards the end of the film, is how he was going to get out of it, was the fact that he could actually maybe connect into their brain, like everyone's brain, and he'd be able to see some sort of cure or some sort of or speak with them, or you know what I mean? Like there would be some sort of connection that way through the brain, not even though he's dying, like there would be some sort of connection that way, but they went a different angle, which was fine. But I liked that voiceover. The music, we had lots of that real tonal, orchestral. We didn't really have any pop songs or, any current music that connects to a moment, but it was all created and very high end orchestral, tonal, moody to increase that suspense. Like that was all really important. And probably the other thing which we've talked a fair bit about was just the editing. I just think the editing was really outstanding in this, that it progressively, you said maybe it got a bit too much and sometimes it does. I didn't really feel that, but I did think that, it progressively got progressively got more and more disorientating for us as the audience and also for the characters. Until we get to that point, like Huntington and him, they have that medic conversation and they're like in each other's faces and a gun to their head and then they're talking and they're laughing and then one's standing and like they were just going in circles, as you said. Like the analogy is like being drunk as a university student and having a conversation. It's very true, that kind of, we're so and it does connect to time as well, because those nights either went on forever, didn't they, or they went by in a blip and you were like, what happened last night?
Yeah, the sun comes up and you're like, gee, already?
Is it already? I mean, like, haven't we just started, So, I liked that. And it did progressively get worse and worse. Like, I remember the first bit with Whit, like, there's a moment that he walks down the corridor and he sort of stops and shakes. And as I said, just cuts him from, like, the left side of the screen and then all of a sudden he's on the right side. So it's kind of like, that's impossible. So he's lost a fragment of time, hasn't he? Yeah. Because he's like probably moved across, but they've just cut out the boring bit. They've cut out the middle bit. And that's what his experience of the world is. And then as the film goes on, that gets worse and worse. There's a moment where he's standing there and there's more than one of him all around him. Yeah. There's multiples and they're all reacting and talking and doing, and then he kind of like pulls himself back. So it kind of gets worse and worse as the film goes on. So just that idea of cutting time rather than just being a pure logical narrative structure, we have these moments where it's all time is interspersed onto each other. And even the whole film does it, because at the start we have them really at the end, don't we?
Yes.
Bookends, like we do. And even then in the next scene, like we detailed before, Whit is like in the locker room, but then he actually thinks back to probably saying goodbye to his wife. And then we come, we're cutting in between all of that, aren't we? So we're constantly throughout this film, time is kind of disorientated. So I really liked that. I thought it was really great. Like I haven't probably...
It's quite unique. I haven't seen that level of that you said, because I've seen obviously time cuts before.
Yeah.
I think Drew Casson did it.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
But that was more of a YouTube-y type time cut effect. This one here was a psychological time.
It was totally. Yeah.
Somehow it portrayed that it wasn't just, we're skipping forward to the more interesting part, the next interesting thing, which is what YouTube does. It was like, here is something else that happened.
Yeah.
But neither you nor the character know when it happened.
No.
It must be sometime around the same time, because he's in the same room, but who knows?
Yeah. And the thing with that is like, it's not just the YouTube effect. It's a symbolic effect. Like we, as the character, they really are pulling us in to feel that feeling that he's feeling, because he's constantly, once he's infected, he's constantly like shaking himself, trying to like clear himself.
Yeah, he's like a little weird noise.
Yeah, so it's that constant like, that feeling you can't shake off, the fact that you're maybe sick, you want to get rid of it, but you can't get rid of it, So I thought that was really fantastic. So look, Infini is a great film, and probably to bring it full circle, there is the whole point of this film, I think, is about, like what is life, the value of life, who is valuable, whose life is valuable, and we
what
see
parts
that,
of life are valuable.
and what parts of valuable. Like at the end of the day, this alien species is just a goo, but it's a like highly evolutionized goo that can infect us as humans and send us batshit crazy. But it could also, which the film details, actually like take a part of us and kind of almost create that into a whole new species, I suppose. So it's very powerful. We have Whit, who is doing the whole mission because he's got a pregnant wife, so the life of his child. We have the other two, Claire and Morgan, are having a baby as well, and she's kind of saying we shouldn't be bringing a baby into this world. Like, why should we bring life? Like, bring life into this world. Whit at the end says to them, "You've picked
Menzies, of course, with his daughter,
like
that he's trying to keep promises to,
be
involved in."
And Huntington as well says to him, "You like, oh yeah, I get it. You would kill everyone to save yourself, but you did kill everyone to save yourself. Like, are you just selfish, or are you actually doing the benefit of the human race, like by saving the sane person?" So it's like a real debate, isn't it? Is one life, like you're saving yourself because you've got a wife and pregnant back home. Well, someone here's probably got a wife and baby back home, and you just killed them. So it's like that kind of questioning of life, isn't it? Yeah. But let us know if we're totally wrong. What you think is the social commentary of Infini.
Yeah. Did you get any sort of religious vibe, or just philosophical vibe, or
science vibe?
Do you like a bit of the biology going on here? What's up the story? You can get on us through, let's say, spacebrains@gravityundone.net is if you want to email us. You could do it at Space Brains Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, Gravity Undone, Twitter or something. You could look up Mark Regan Filmmaker website. You can get a link there or something if you want.
You can.
I'm sure, if you can't get a hold of us, you don't know how to use the internet and you weren't listening to us in the first place. So if you listen to us, you know how to get a hold of us.
Yes, definitely.
Let us know.
Yeah. Anyway, I think on the next episode, Surrey, we should do, because you mentioned that you've never seen Surrogates.
Surrogates with Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis?
I have not seen Surrogates.
Let's do Surrogates.
Surrogates
movie? The movie, yeah. The movie. The science fiction movie,
Science fiction movie.
Because
Surrogates, a science fiction movie.
I have some fond memories of Surrogates, so I haven't seen it in a long time now, but I reckon that should be our next one. And who does not like Bruce Willis? I mean, come on. And the Australian actress, Radha Mitchell. Anyway, so check that out if you want to check it out in advance, so then you can come back and you don't have to listen to us keep saying spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. And you can follow along on our next episode.
See ya.
Bye.